This is the examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Bruschi.
We are talking with psychologist Dr. John Delatorre today. We want to dive into the world of Lori Vallow Daybell and what we've been witnessing the last week since the last time we talked. I think something of note that has occurred since the last time we talked was hearing some of Lori's friends testify about just how deep they were in the belief system that Lori and Chad shared as well. Hearing testimony and questions being asked that really, if you were to take into a different context, you'd be saying, how are you having this conversation as an adult with another adult and going along with it? Things like the kids climbing and crawling across the ceiling like demons and believing that this happened when you were in the other room. It's really kind of shocking. John, I want to ask you about that. What were we witnessing when we heard the testimony of some of her friends, such as Melanie Gibb or Zulema, in terms of their, I don't want to say gullibility, but their way of being influenced by Lori?
Well, I think what we're seeing is that how easy it is to fall victim to cult-like thinking. And I think it's important to understand that the influence that someone can have over you, particularly when they tell you that everything that you're doing is for the greater good, I think can have such an overwhelming influence that they can convince you, right? This charismatic individual can convince you to engage in things that on its surface, you probably question, but you're being told constantly that it's for the greater good. And people want to do good things. I mean, ultimately, they want to do good things. And so I think a lot of, our audience might think, well, I could never fall victim to that. When the reality is that the right statements at the right time by the right person can absolutely convince you to do anything that at this point you would say that you would never do.
And that's really disturbing to wrap your mind around. What were these individuals? Was there anything different about them? Were they more impressionable? Was there anything that made them ripe targets, if you will, for falling prey to this sort of thinking, or just agreeing and going along with this sort of thinking? Because I honestly don't know how predator-like, and we can talk about that in a moment, the Daybells really were, or at least to what they believed they were.
I think it's more, if we had to boil it down, I think it's more wrong place, wrong time. Mm-hmm. I think that there are certain vulnerabilities that people can have, such as lower self-esteem, that on its surface, you probably wouldn't recognize, right? That, just as an outside person, you don't know how someone feels about themselves. So it's certainly possible that at the time that they had met the Vallow Daybells, right, at the time that they met this couple, they were in a lower state, right? They were lower self-esteem. But the reality is that even individuals with medium to high self-esteem can also be coerced and manipulated into engaging things. So I think it was more that they were simply around Chad and Lori. I think just being around them made them susceptible, and not necessarily anything that was going on internally within the individuals that were manipulated.
Would you have to have some sort of predisposition or previous belief in what, I'm not trying to insult religions here, but some sort of magical thinking in some way, shape, or form to be able to fall into some of the things that the Daybells were talking about? Because, obviously it goes far beyond just, have faith in God or Jesus or things like that. She was talking about telling her friend Melanie that her son was crawling up the wall and onto the ceiling, like Exorcist style. And they seem to go along with it. Like, I believe this is actually happening. It's one thing I know to swindle someone out of money or convince them this is a good investment or this or that, where it's more based in reality. But when we're going to supernatural craziness here that just bars and goes beyond the line of sanity and physical possibilities, is it the same thing for someone to fall into that as it would be a financial scheme or something?
I don't think it's any demonstrably different, right?
No?
When it comes to manipulating and coercing someone to give you a bunch of money, as opposed to having them follow you as a part of their cult, and so now you're an acolyte following them, or coercing and manipulating someone to believe that violence is the only answer to when it comes to the world's problems. I don't think that there's a demonstrably different way in which you are approaching the individual that you are attempting to manipulate. So I don't think when it comes to Chad and Lori and anybody else who would engage in these kinds of things, they simply use the tactic that they feel most comfortable with. And some people are better at, convincing someone to give them money. Other people are better at convincing people to engage in violent acts. And so I think there isn't anything sort of, when it comes to the mark, right? When it comes to the individual that's being manipulated,
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything consistent that we can say, oh, that person is clearly going to be a victim of a Ponzi scheme or a victim of, the Manson family. Like, I don't think there's anything that we can see that would make that individual more susceptible to it. But I think what's clear is that the closer you are to that individual who is attempting to coerce you and manipulate you, the closer you are in relation to them, the more likely you are to give them the benefit of the doubt, to say that, these are their true experiences. So I need to fall in line with what is going on with their true experiences. And that's what these individuals want. They want to bring you in closer. The closer you are to them, the more power they have over you.
This is an interesting area of it where I'm looking at it going, did Lori and Chad, or at least one of them, truly intend to I can't say the word right now. I don't know why. Coerce their individuals, their friends, into going along with their thinking for nefarious intent? Or was the whole line of thinking with what she was doing, with the relationships he had with Melanie Gibb and Zulema and such, were those genuine relationships in Lori's mind, and she did not look at it from a nefarious outlook? Obviously, on the outside, we can look at this now and go, oh, wow, this is horrible. But if someone is truly believing the things they're peddling, like it seems Lori might have been, does that make her, like an evil intent, like a Jeffrey Epstein, who we knew was intentionally misleading people and taking them somewhere to do horrible things with them? With Lori, I don't know that she thought things were horrible with what was happening.
Well, I think we have to take an opportunity to get out of our own perspective and shift into what would be her perspective. In this case, we're talking about Lori. What would be Lori's perspective? I do think the relationships were genuine, though I don't, as a psychologist, I don't think the relationships were genuine. Mm-hmm. I think she placed more emphasis on what the intimacy that she had with all of these individuals, whether it's Chad or whether it's, her sister-in-law, right? All of these individuals. I think she placed more emphasis on the intimacy that was there than was really, in fact, actually there. And so is it possible that, she was able to manipulate these individuals using that relationship? Sure, but I don't know that the end game was always going to be murder. I don't know that that was always the thing. I think they wanted other things, but the further Lori and Chad found themselves in these thoughts about the end times and zombies and light and dark and all that stuff, that the end result ended up being that violent actions were going to be taken. I don't know that the end game was actually to kill the children, but I do think the further along it went, the more likely it was that they were going to be ardent believers that violence was necessary.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
We have more for you. Be sure to press subscribe wherever you download podcasts so you don't miss any of our breaking updates and discussions on the cases we're following for you right here. My name is Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.